Welcome, everybody, to the Genesis Project Podcast. Business principles for beginners from the School of Hard Knocks. They say that success leaves clues. In this podcast, we're going to discover the clues that it leaves behind, and we're going to start at the very beginning. We'll get into the weeds of how the guests of the show came up with their business ideas, the why behind their business ideas, how they dealt with setbacks and failures, what keeps them pushing forward, and the emotions behind it all. Everyone wants to start a business, but many are held back by something that keeps them from starting. We'll learn what it takes to get to the next level of business and beyond, and we're learning together through different principles of people who graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. So, grab you a pen, some paper, and a highlighter to take notes, because class is in session. Welcome to the Genesis Project Podcast. I am your Chancellor of the School of Hard Knocks, as well as the host of the Genesis Project Podcast, Bernard Gleaton. So, I had this, let's say, revelation one day last week, and I was thinking about creativity. Creativity in a sense of how it has tremendously helped me, and I even took it deeper as far as how creativity has definitely helped me in the sense of when I was a kid and how I was able to keep up with that creativity all throughout my childhood into my adulthood. It had me wondering, how can we get deeper into this creativity, right? How can we bring it out of us? How can we just go deeper into creativity? So that led me on the search to find somebody, potentially somebody who could come and speak on that. And with that, I have found somebody just to do that. So with that being said, I want to bring my guest professor into the class who can speak on a little bit about creativity. And while this may not have anything to do with business per se, I do feel that it has a huge part in that, because let's face it, the only way we'll be able to get ideas, business ideas, and do creative stuff is if we work on our creativity. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and bring it to the classroom, our guest professor for today. He goes by the name of Guest Professor Parham Elmi. Did I say that right?
Yeah, very close. Parhma Elmi. But
Oh, okay. Okay,
all good,
that's cool.
all good, Bernard. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And yeah, it's a business show. So I think what I'll kind of add on to the creativity is, I guess, trust in the process, and I guess how to not be afraid of stepping out of your comfort zone and failing. Because I think those three can be very much linked.
Totally, totally. Even with you saying that, I want you to go ahead and tell the class a little bit about you. Give the class a quick bio on you, and
Sure.
we could jump and do a deep dive on this whole creativity thing, man.
Yeah, for sure. So again, my name is Parham. I'm a kinesiology graduate from Simon Fraser University out on the west coast of Canada. And I guess something about me is I've realized that I am not the smartest person in the world by any means. And, a lot of people try to be number one in a lot of things. And especially in school, everyone gets compared in an intelligent way. And this isn't to say that I didn't work hard, that I didn't get decent grades, but there's always people that were better than me. And obviously, when you're in those moments, you feel a little bit down. You're like, I'm putting in all this work, I'm not getting the same results. And there were particular times where I felt, quite frankly, sad. But then it comes to the Genesis moment, which is an amazing question that Bernard asks. And we're going to get into that moment. And yeah, that Genesis moment led to a lot of creative ventures, from e-commerce to entrepreneurship to just a whole lot of realms, and even to this podcast that I'm starting now called the Personal Process Podcast, where we interview guests and get their life's journey on how their hardships form the person that they are today and what they've learned from it. So yeah, I think that sums it up for now.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I'm secretly excited about this because those who know me and been following me knows that I am a huge lover of creativity, and we're definitely gonna jump into that a little bit more in just a few. But with all that being said, I know you spoke on the Genesis moment, and
Mm,
that brings me to the first question that I like to ask all of my guest professors. What is your Genesis moment? And for those of you who are brand new to the School of Hard Knocks, who don't know what a Genesis moment is, let me explain to you what that is. So, a Genesis moment is when you come to a fork in your road of your life, and you could go right, you could go left. It don't have to be good, don't have to be bad, but you can see what your life could be like beyond those first steps. So that is a Genesis moment. So an example of a Genesis moment is me starting the show. That's a Genesis moment. Me trying out for the CFL, 4 years removed from high school and never playing it down in college. That is a Genesis moment. Another Genesis moment is when I got married. So with that being said, guest professor, what is your Genesis moment?
right on. Thank you for that, Bernard. And again, that's one of the top questions. I love it. It's just absolutely awesome. So, my Genesis moment is kind of funny. And this kind of goes into a little bit of luck, being prepared for it, and taking opportunities when they arise. With that, I will segue into the Genesis moment. So, I was at university. I just finished a long day on campus. I think it was around 7:30 at night, just walking back, taking the bus home, and I am scrolling through Facebook as a lot of people do when they're in university. And on the textbook exchange group, because no one likes buying textbooks new, I notice a post. Hey, do you have an entrepreneurship idea? Well, we have an incubator. Come talk to us. I don't really know much about it. Obviously, I had a lot of entrepreneurship ideas, and I never took action on it, didn't know how to start. And I said, kind of looks a little weird. Why would you post on a textbook exchange site? And you know what? I just followed up with it. I shot them an email and just went through with it. A couple weeks later, I end up in the incubator, which is essentially just a place where they teach you how to do entrepreneurship, from marketing to pitching to starting an idea to verifying an idea to getting funding and just everything with it. And needless to say, Bernard, this was the moment that I realized, wow, why was I comparing myself so much to other people in a domain where it didn't necessarily suit me the best? I went into this incubator and I was versing individuals from various fields. As myself, I'm a kinesiology major. I got the science background, but business, I didn't really learn much about that. And I was versing people who were in the business program at SFU, at other universities. They had teams of 5 people trying to make like the new Alibaba, trying to, make different apps. And here's this guy in kinesiology, hasn't done any business courses and just roams in. What ended up happening is they had a competition at the end of it. And since I just loved the process so much, Bernard, I took in everything from it. And I came in first place. I got the first place prize. And I think just this whole process of going through this was my genesis moment, because I realized that even though I didn't have the training in this, even though this was new for me, I came up with a great idea and it really just extrapolated to a first place prize. And versus so many individuals who had the knowledge, had the experience, put in the time, I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is something that is for me. And that kind of led into a bunch of different activities that I'm sure we'll probably get to.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We're definitely going to get into that because there's so I feel like your story is unique
Mm,
in the aspect of so much that can be unpacked from that, right?
sure.
I think that we've all had. Well, let's start with the process,
Mm,
okay? When you talked about the incubator, it
mm.
made me think, wow, did I ever have the opportunity to do something like that? Yeah, as a matter of fact, it dawned on me that I did.
Did you?
You know, I in Detroit, there is a company that you might have heard of that's starting to be pretty big now, right? Called Quicken Loans, right?
Mm,
Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers and a few other teams or whatnot, he's really huge in the mortgage industry and all that type of stuff.
sure.
Um, when Quicken Loans really started to get big in the city of Detroit. They had this incubator, but they call it Wisdom U, and they would teach you. Well, you obviously had to try to compete to get into it, and they would actually fund you the money to give you like the little office and stuff like that.
Wow.
I didn't quite get in because my idea was it wasn't big and grand. It was just the idea of just the jazz club. It not saying that you can't make money in a jazz club, but this mortgage
Sure.
tycoon, having just a jazz club, you know, not saying that he was, just trying to get a lot of money from me or whatever else like that, but that's he was looking for X amount return on whatever he put into, and you definitely not going to hit that X amount with this jazz club. But
Sure.
I've just going through that process. I've learned so much as well. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I know we're about to jump into it, but I guess my follow up question to that is, I want you to talk about the process, right?
mm,
What about it? What about process? Do you feel that we as people, maybe as even entrepreneurs, or
sure.
just the class per se, what is it about the process that we're missing out on?
Sure. Awesome. So that's a fantastic question, Bernard. Thanks for asking it. I think, a lot of people, especially in 2020, we're bombarded by successful pictures, people posting up by Lamborghinis. I mean, Ty Lopez is a key example, right? Just showing
Yeah,
up here in my garage by my Lamborghinis. Oh, by the way, look at my books. And it became a meme because it's kind of what everyone's doing now, and Ty Lopez did a great job at marketing. Good on him. But, there's a lot of steps that come before that. And let's go into a metaphorical example, because I do poetry too.
yeah,
It's like, to be at the top, and if you're starting here, what needs to happen? Well, you need steps.
yeah.
What are the steps? That's the process. And I honestly think, Bernard, that each step that you put on to get to your successful podium is a failure, you know? And it's something that's not really, well, I guess it kind of is now, but not as much as it should. Cause I think honestly, like a lot of people are scared of failing. And I don't think there are many people who haven't failed trying to start their dreams, trying to start their passion. I mean, like, let's just talk about podcasting, Bernard. I mean, I'm looking back at my first couple episodes and I'm like, yeah, like I could have done something better. And, I took feedback and I was fortunate enough to have some great guests like yourself on our show. So definitely
Hmm.
check out that episode. And, I'm just like, okay, what can I do better? What can I do this? And, sometimes people would give me amazing advice and sometimes they'd be like, hey man, you suck at this. I'm just like, ooh, that hurt. But, you know,
Right.
after that initial just comment, I'm like, you know what? This guy's looking out for me and they want me to improve. Took that feedback in, laid that step, and I'm on my way up. And I think this applies to anything, if you want to, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the particular field, like me starting this podcast isn't just starting a podcast. I've had marketing experience from the jobs that I've done. I've had marketing experience from e-commerce where I learned how to use the Facebook marketing to target individuals on Instagram, Facebook, and even like Google. Things of that nature allow us to better our understanding. And although it could seem very specific in that field, and if we fail, because I started two e-commerce shops, Bernard, and they both failed. And
Yeah.
it happens and I may go back into it again, but I still have those stepping stone foundations. Those don't go away. I may not be at the top of the podium right now, but those steps, my man, they are ingrained there and they're ready to go.
Mm, mm. You know, and I love speaking on failure. And I think we're gonna circle back around to failure in a
Sure.
little bit. But when you brought up the whole podcasting thing, right? You know just as well as I know, this podcasting thing, people jump into it and then they do a few episodes and they're like, this ain't for me, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've never experienced that. I've always
Sure.
I've never experienced that, right? And needless to say, this is living proof that I've never experienced that because this is, whatever season this is, right? Third, fourth, fifth season, I've beat the odds, right?
Let's
but
go.
I would speak on my process as far as the podcast, right?
Mm,
When I've listened to podcasts for years and years, right? And once I made the decision to actually do a podcast, I studied. I had two people, or rather two podcasts that I love to listen to for various reasons, right? And it was mostly about, yeah, it was a lot to do with business, but also with uh uh personal, just self help,
development. Yeah,
right? And I love both of them, right? But for various reasons.
sure.
And I'll go ahead and I'll say what those podcasts are. It was Mike Dillard's podcast and John Lee Dumas podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire, right? I love both of them. Both of them gave me exactly what I was hungry for. You know what I'm saying? I needed something deep, something impactful, something with steps that I could do that I could apply into my own life and things of that nature, right? But for Mike Dillard, I got the heart of
Mm,
a lot of the things that the questions that he was asking. I was getting heart from that, right? Uh, and I also got some great self-development tips from his podcast. Whereas John Lee Dumas's podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, I was able to get, I guess you could say, like personality,
sure.
the mechanics and everything, right? And again, I love both of these podcasts. Like those are two of my go-to podcasts, right?
Sure.
And when I decided to make my own podcast, what I ended up doing was I took what I love from Mike Dillard's podcast and I took what I love from John Lee Dumas's podcast and I put it together and I threw myself in the mix and I made somebody once said gumbo, right? Yeah, I took this gumbo and I threw a little seasoning in there, and, threw a little bit, some more carrots, a little bit shrimp and
Sure.
whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And I tasted it. I said, okay, this is it. This is it. And that's essentially how I came out with the Genesis Project podcast, right? I took a little bit of this, took a little bit of that, and I mixed it with myself. And each time I try to be better at it, right?
Sure.
And that's really how my podcast, that's how I crafted my podcast, right? And I had the wonderful pleasure of being on your podcast. And brother, I'll come out and tell you that, I told you this even before we hit the record button that I think you really on to something. You know what I mean? As a
Appreciate it.
person who is a, ex-athlete, you know, process is something that was drilled into me, right? you know, practice, right? After practice, then is, hitting the gym.
We're
After it's
talking
hitting the
about
gym,
practice.
yeah, we talking about practice, right? That old AI thing. Now we're getting in the hip hop deal. But it was all about the process, right? And every day it was something. Even though I got tired of the process from time to time, there was a reason behind that process that made me a better athlete, or just a better competitor than the person that I'm going against, right?
Absolutely.
And I think I definitely understand where you come from. I agree with you 100% that people is missing that process, that process, right? You can't just get out here and start shooting baskets and think you're gonna go into the NBA without having a process. You know what I mean?
Oh man. Exactly. And it's I just want to comment on two things. You mentioned that you listen to this podcast and you listen to that podcast and then you listen to yourself. You put all of them together and that's what you are. And Bernard, that's such an important piece because I think a lot of people, even in podcasting and anything, they try to just copy people off the gate, but they don't realize that once you mix it with yourself, man, that authenticity speaks. And like
Oh,
I've been telling you, Bernard, like that your questions and just the flavor of your podcast, and it just hits deep, man. It's authentic, it's real, it's professional. You got some awesome advice in there. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, and then you're like, "What is your Genesis mode?" And you're explaining. I'm just like, man, hands down, that is such a fire question. I still haven't found the question that you know, is that level, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And it's huge. And with regards to the process part, 100%, It's a little bit tough because it's something that I think if you don't go through, you just don't get. And especially like the kids nowadays. I mean, like, I don't know if you're on TikTok. I've been looking on TikTok and like the things these people are exposed to. It's like, oh, do you want to make $1 million in a second? Go to this website, click on this, and you get $1 million. Easy as that. Just side hustle. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You sign up and you have to like pay $3,000. You start at $0, and then maybe in a year you can get 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's like these kids are just conditioned to think that, and when I say these kids, I mean new age individuals based on the media's portrayal of success are conditioned to think that success comes easy, and they feel defeated if it doesn't happen instantaneously. And it's a little bit of a shame because if you trust in your journey to get to the path that you are, you'll enjoy it more. You'll gain more from it in terms of knowledge, and dare I say, become more successful. That's my opinion.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I feel myself going into so many uh sports themes and things of that nature. I'm trying my best not to geek out too hard.
Hey, man, feel yourself. I'm about it.
And listen, I the, we always talk about Jordan and everything, right? And I know everybody may not have had the opportunity to actually see Jordan play,
Sure.
but whether it's on TV or even through YouTube, right? So let me try to freshen this up a tad bit. You look at Kobe, right?
Mm,
Even though there's still some people who may not have seen him play, God rest his soul and everything like that,
yep.
right? So let's focus on somebody like LeBron James,
Mm,
right? LeBron James never went to college. He went straight to the league from
mm,
high school, right? For a person, and there's few people who was able to make a huge leap like that from
sure.
high school to the league and actually made some type of impact. And there was a lot of them that just didn't make it, right? Once they got into the league, they just didn't make it. But there was a few people who actually made it to the league from high school, was able to do, make a decent impact, right? Whereas you have LeBron, who came in straight from the league from high school, is, you know, dare I say, he's pretty much up there with talks of being a GOAT or being the GOAT
Sure.
at some point in time, right?
Top 10.
Exactly. I would say that there was some type of process that this
Mm,
brother had to go through to
sure.
get to where he's at, right? Not only to get to where he's at, but to stay where he's at and continue to transcend what he's doing now, right? And even if we look at him as a overnight success, okay, so he might be an overnight success, right?
Right on.
But you and I both know from the people that we've interviewed on our show, an overnight success is 30 years, 20
Yeah.
years, 15 years of hard work, what I'm saying, in the making. You know what I mean? So, I'm saying all that to say this, that with him putting together a process and being specific, uh, particular about his process and and just downright anal about his process. Allow him to be where he's at. And the same things that he's doing now, right? We can see that in people like Kobe Bryant,
Oh, yeah.
Michael Jordan, right? I mean, even D Wade, you know what I mean? And just numerous of athletes out here, right? But
Yep.
let's make this transition from athlete to real world people,
Sure.
right? As of this recording, we've heard that um, Bezos is stepping down from Amazon.
Crazy.
Crazy. I've read an article the other day about the guy who's going to be taking over, and he said that he thought he was really uh, specific or just process driven or disciplined. That's the word. He
Sure.
thought he was disciplined. Uh, Jeff was on a whole nother level of discipline. Like he said, I cannot live up to his level of discipline, right? And that fascinated me because you got this guy who made a freaking global impact,
Oh yeah.
right? And you just gotta think this is not something that he just came up with one day, just be like, oh, I'm gonna do Amazon. Amazon just happened, right?
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to that true thing that we said earlier. Process. The process. So with that being said, I know I'm sort of alluding to how important the process is, but I want you to talk about why it's important for you to have a process. Please talk
Sure.
about it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's many different facets. I mean, we can. I guess I'll start with sports since we started from sports, but let's talk about Kobe. I mean, like, I think I was watching an YouTube video on it or whatever, and a reporter was just walking in the gym right when Kobe started practice before his actual practice. Because, he actually gets in to start his practice before. And, he takes like his shots and he does basic moves, basic dribbling, basic shooting, basic crossover. And he does that and does that and does that and does that. Now, a lot of people could be like, okay, Kobe, I mean, let's be honest, he's definitely top 10. And I don't think there's any
Yeah,
question about that. Whether you think he's in the top 5 or top 1, that's for debate. That's not probably conducive to this interview. But, he's one of the top players in the game. And he spent so much time on these little details. And, it is because they're building blocks. And similar to these small things, that's similar to every experience that you have in life. There are these little building blocks, how to communicate with people. Bernard, let's talk about podcasting. I don't know about you, but my ability to connect and communicate with a person and get my points across in a sales pitch, for example, has gone up immensely since I started. And, I'm relating to so many different people. I'm relating to people who are in the arts. I'm relating to people who started their own businesses. I'm relating to people who've been in the hardest situations that you could imagine and persevered and succeeded. And I just have a plethora of understanding that I didn't have before. And this is a process, like I mentioned before, when I first started podcasting, I sucked and
yeah,
I got better. I got better. And, it's still a work in progress. And we're just going to keep going. And, it's important to have a process even in your day. Let's talk about managing how you're going to spend your time, right? I don't know how you go about it. I think you're better than me right now. But just like managing your time, like when are you going to do your podcast? Are you going to use for example, Calendly to, schedule in people so you don't have to deal with that? And when we're talking about like Jeff Bezos' discipline, he runs a multi-billion or probably trillion-dollar company. I don't know how much it is, but and he has a family. And it's like, how do you make time for that? And it's about organizing your day in a way that you want. I think, and again, don't quote me on this, but he was mentioning like up until 10, he spends time with his family, his kids, gets breakfast, and then goes to work. And, that's important for him. And that's important for how he values his life. And at the end of the day, there comes a point where you have to decide, what do you want from life? Do you want a lot of freedom? Do you want a lot of time to do what you want to do? I think I was watching a YouTube video on this. There's a security guard, and there was this like billionaire real estate mogul, and the security guard worked for the real estate mogul himself. And, the real estate guy, he was traveling left, right, and center, barely had time to see people. And, he had like 8 different penthouses in like the nicest places, from Singapore to New York to LA. And the question came up to the security guard, like, hey, don't you think it's a little bit unfair for you not having the money that this guy has? And the security guard point blank looked at him. I would not want to do the work that he's doing. And, that's a big point that a lot of people need to consider, because, yeah, look at Jeff Bezos. He has a ton of money. He has a ton of, I don't know, probably cars. And, he's probably eating good, no more McChickens or all that on the grind on the daily, right? No hate on McChickens, love them. But, it's just a different way of living. And it's like, what kind of sacrifice do you want to pay for that? A lot of people want to be CEOs, but it's not that you can just be a CEO like this. CEO comes with losing an income for a period of time. It comes with losing sleep. It comes with stressors of not knowing whether it's going to succeed. It comes with a lot of people hating on you and saying, oh, give up. And this could be from family members, right? And, it's it's hard. It's hard on you mentally, it's hard on you physically. And it's kind of like betting on yourself, right? And you can trust the process for as long as you want. And unfortunately, sometimes it won't work out in that particular instance. But I guarantee, like I mentioned, I failed in so many times, from e-commerce to starting my own business to X, Y, and Z. But every single time I failed, I took a little nugget, added it to my repertoire. Took a little nugget, added to my repertoire. And those steps that we were talking about, they become bigger and wider. So we reach that podium quicker, and we have a clearer understanding of where it is and where we need to go, seeing the pitfalls that we may have missed in the beginning. And I think that's one of the most important things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer it?
I believe you answered it exactly the way I knew that you would. Right.
Right on. Is that a good
I,
thing?
yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I
Right
think
on.
there was a few things that had jumped out at me, and I'm so so my cousin-in-law. I love my cousin-in-law to death, man, because we have great conversations, much like we have it now, right? And
Sure.
I'm always thinking, what makes me different from the next man? We started at the same point. If we going down the same road, what makes me different from this guy? Except that this guy went off over here, and I'm still doing what I'm doing, and that guy over there is like, oh man, I gave up on that, and, all type of BS or whatever else like that, right? And I keep thinking to myself, man, but we started at the same point. You had the same opportunities I had. Why is it that you over here not doing anything, whereas I'm over here, I'm seeing some success, and I think you spoke to the fact of the process, right?
Mm.
And the reason why I brought up my cousin-in-law is because he told me to go read this book that he's currently reading now. It's called Atomic Habits, right?
Mm.
And well, I as much as I would love to sit down and actually read the book, I'm too much on the go, but I freaking love audiobooks. So I got the audiobook and I'm listening to it. And man, it really played a part in me. And I didn't read the whole book yet. I'm maybe at chapter 3 at this point.
Sure.
But man, from start to chapter 3, I drew a lot of parallels with the things that he was saying. I think habits uh, plays a huge role in the process, right? I'm saying that to say that we process for a lot of people might be too big for them, right? So if we was to break down the process to just something more bite sized, right? Like those chicken nuggets.
Let's go.
Like those chicken nuggets, right? If we break down the process into just chicken nuggets, those chicken nuggets being habits. Every day is a process, but every day is your process is the habits that you keep, right? And in the book, create Atomic Habits, he talked about the law of 1%, right?
What's up?
Some the law of 1%. So this is something that I knew a long time ago, but hearing it explained to me in this way just blew my mind, right? So needless to say, I think everybody needs to go read Atomic Habits. If I'm getting revelations upon revelations upon revelations, what I'm saying, and I'm not even through the whole book. I'm only up to chapter 3. But
Sounds
um,
like a Genesis moment.
it, we have these Genesis moments every day, brother.
Let's go.
So the law of 1% is pretty much you improving yourself 1% each day. Now, you may not see that change in you within 24 hours. You may not see it within a month or two. But if you keep working at it, 1%, getting better, 1% today, 1% tomorrow, it makes you 1% better than you was the day before, right? But if you continue to work on yourself and just get better, 1% at a time, right? Now we have the compound interest of
Oh yeah.
that 1%. You know what I mean? That compound interest, right? So, I'm gonna do my best to break it down even smaller for people to understand better. So, let's say you start today. by improving yourself 1%. In about it's 365 days of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may not see it month one, you may not see it month two, but eventually you're going to break through if you continue to go through that 1% a day, right?
Sure.
And let's say 365 days from now, now you skyrocketing
Oh yeah.
to the moon. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not saying it's going to happen in 365. That's just an example that I'm putting out there. It could
Sure.
take, 365 times two. It might take two
Sure.
2 years. Say who knows, right?
Might take
But
less.
it might be less. But it's those habits that you've created for you to get to that 1% better each day. And at
Sure.
some point in time, you're going to hit that plateau. But once you break through that plateau, you skyrocket into the moon. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Just like
It
GameStop.
just like GameStop at the time of this recording,
Yeah.
when GameStop happened
What a
and all
time.
of that stuff. But that also brought me another question that I would love to hear your answer on, which
Sure.
is you mentioned fear, right?
Mm,
How do you deal or failure? Let me put it in the more layman
sure.
terms. You talked about failure. How do you deal with failure? Because you
Mm.
and I both know that people don't want to put themselves out there because they are afraid to fail. So how do you deal with failure?
Great question. And this is a big one. So I think the first point comes to realizing that failure is normal. It is not really associated. I don't think failure should be associated with the negative connotations that it brings. And the reason I say this is because I think it was the Finnish system for education, where, I don't know if it was Finnish or maybe it was Norwegian. I'm going to hedge my bets on Finnish, but I may be wrong. So just research this part on your own. But, these individuals, when you're in school, if you do not pass a course, they write on your report card, not good yet, or not well enough yet. And that yet is very important because it is
Mm,
not a failure. It is, I still need some work and then I'm going to pass. Whereas, in Canada or the US, you can get held back a grade, man. And, that hits a person. And they don't say that, you're not good enough yet. They say they fail. And people internalize that feeling of failure. But if you hear that message, not good enough yet, why can't we apply that to our own life? Why can't we apply that to the businesses we run? Why can't we apply that to the relationships we have? Why can't we apply that to everything? Cooking, man, dude, I started with just eggs and now I'm making pho. I'm not sure if you know what pho is, Vietnamese cuisine. Whew, got some fire pho, my man. But but it's like I sucked at first. I sucked, man. I never burnt pizza, so I think I was gifted in that. But it's you start small, you fail, you may butcher some eggs, and happens, but after a while, you improve your skills, and through failing, you learn what you did wrong. You don't let it happen again. I think the saying goes, you only touch the hot stove once, and then you realize that's not something to do. Um,
ooh, like Kevin Hart said, but it's ooh, hot daddy, hot, hot.
exactly, and it's just realizing it's a part of the process, and like I think another point of it is like people think that a lot of people think that if you fail, a lot of people will judge them. I'm not sure if you can speak on this, Bernard, but I've failed in e-commerce twice. I've failed in my entrepreneurship ventures, I think 2 to 3 times. Some people care, I'm sure, but like at the end of the day, are they my close friends? And if they're not, why should I even pay any attention to that? Because the lessons that I've gained from those failures have been tremendous. I mean, even for myself, I ran for a student election to become a senator at my university, and that went smooth. I went for the board of director at the student society. That went smooth. And then I ran for something called the board of governor, which is pretty much dealing with the financial body of the university. And long story short, a lot of factors played into it. And I learned a lot of lessons from it because I failed. And oh man, Bernard, let me tell you, man, our school has like 26,000 people in it. And I was a pretty decently known name, and there are people saying, "Oh, how'd the election go? How'd the election go? How'd the election go?" And I'm not trying to flex like I'm an actual, county mayor candidate or anything like that. But
Mhm.
when you get reminded of your failure that much, it does suck. It hurts, and like there were some circumstances that weren't the best, so that kind of made it a little bit worse. But it was a moment that wasn't the most favorable at that time. But man, let me tell you, Bernard, that sting that I felt there, if you invert it into the positive in terms of what I gained from it, times that positive times 10. That's what I took from it. Because, Bernard, they say in success, you celebrate, right? You get that promotion, you get that, I don't know, $10 million contract. I'm just using euphemisms here, but it's fun. You bring your friends out, you go to a party, you get a little ice cream cake going on if that's your fancy. But in failure, you ponder. That pondering. Now, what does that do? You really reflect on everything. You're like, okay, why did I do this? How could I have done this differently? I guess, how can I improve myself? And why did I trust this person? Why did I not trust this person? How could I have communicated with these people better? How could I have dealt with the challenges of the time better? And, again, the initial part of that, the tip of the iceberg, Bernard, it hurts. But once you start picking, once you start going to the under the ocean where all that good stuff is, you're like, wow, I just gained 20 years of knowledge in one failure.
Mm.
And that's the deep part, Bernard, because there's a lot of people I'm sure that you've known in your life that are, I don't know, 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, yet their depth of experience may not be as big as someone, I don't know, let's say 25-year-old who just like went out, started their own company. I mean, look at you, Bernard. You've started your own company, you've started your own IT company, you've ventured into, professional athleticism, you're starting your own podcast. There's a lot of different things that you've done that the average person hasn't done. And your experience from going through those failures, from going through those challenges, shapes you into the person that you are today. Even reading a book like Atomic Habits, like you were mentioning, that's not for the average reader. A lot of people
No.
are just going to be like, what are you talking about, dude? Habits? Eh. But you know why habits are important because you're spending so much time perfecting your craft, perfecting your ability to thrive in life. And you understand that the 1%, although it may seem small, that compound effect is going to add right up.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Speaking on failure,
Mm,
I so a few things came to mind when failure came up, and I feel that maybe I'm just the oddball, the black sheep, and yeah, I've grown to embrace being that black sheep, right? When success comes, yeah, for me that's cool. I'm not okay. The best way I can explain it to you is through a movie, right?
let's go.
And I know everybody probably have not seen this type of movie or probably just not their cup of tea, but Paid in Full, right? One of my favorite movies. You have a character by the name of Ace Boogie, and he has a homeboy named Money Making Mitch, and everything like that. But two totally different guys, right? But they're best friends, right? Ace was more so of yeah, I don't really want to be in a limelight type of deal. But Money Making Mitch, oh, he loves being in a limelight. Okay.
Sure.
If you get a chance, I say watch that movie and you'll see
For
exactly what I'm
sure.
talking about. But there was a moment, of course, it was like a drug dealer movie type deal or whatever, right? Um, when Money Making Mitch got pinched and he went to jail, Ace started realizing like, man, I want money, but me working at these cleaners not going to get it. So that's when he started jumping into the drug game and all that type of stuff. And
Mm,
he started making a name for himself, but he didn't want to be in the limelight like that. He wanted to be in the shadow, still doing his thing. People know him. He come in, do his thing, and he's out. He's not trying to hang out. He's not trying to party, right? And I'm bringing that up because it, for me personally, I see myself more so like Ace. You know what I mean?
mm,
Yeah, let's get out here. I just did this awesome thing. Let's get out here. You know what I'm saying? I don't mind being a limelight, but I'm not trying to put myself in that spotlight. You know what I'm saying?
sure.
I'd rather just be in the back and while I'm celebrating, I'm still thinking in the back of my mind, okay, how could I have done this better? Or how can I use this to because I'm all about leverage, right? How can I leverage this win to get someplace else? right? So I'm always thinking like that. So when it comes to failure, I've mostly developed this particular attitude through sports.
Mm,
Um, and it's that IDGAF attitude. You know what I mean? Yeah, that IDGAF stands for I don't give a, and
blank.
yeah, you figure it out, right? I developed that attitude towards any and everything that I was going after, right? Because I know it's going to be people who's trying to, talk bad about me, putting their shortcomings out on me,
Sure.
projecting their failures onto me
And their insecurities. Yeah.
and their insecurities, right? And that's cool, whatever. But I'm not you, and you're not me. The only difference is what I'm planning on doing and how I'm going to get there. So yeah, even if I fail at this thing, right? That's not necessarily a failure. To me, that's a lesson. Okay, I learned why this failed. There's a billion reasons why things may not work. Things
Sure.
could not work. I just need one reason why it can work, right? And I'm
That's it.
going to work it till I make it work. You know what I mean? And that's
100%.
when it comes to me actually utilizing that attitude when people come and I've mentioned this before. When I wanted to start a business, I asked all my friends and family. 90% of them never started a business before. They had great tips, but they never started a business before. And the 10% that did start a business couldn't remember what they did to start that business, right? So again, I literally had to go through the school of hard knocks, pun intended, which is the reason why I'll call this the school of hard knocks, right? Because I had to go through the school of hard knocks to learn for myself, right? When I talked to people at that time, when I was talking to my friends and family, again, they had great ideas, great advice, and that's cool. Even, and of course, I had my share of family members and friends who said, yeah, don't do that. Nah,
Mm.
it's not going to work, right? But again, this is coming from somebody who never tried. You see what I'm saying?
I
That's
feel you,
that's
man.
that's the biggest point. They've never tried. They've never done. So why would I listen to you if you've never done this? Now, if the 10% came to me and said, okay, don't do it, now I have specific questions for those who have done it. Okay, well, why wouldn't you do it?
Hmm.
How would you do it?
Sure.
What do I need to look out for? You know what I'm saying? So it goes to another one of my other favorite books, The Richest Man in Babylon. If
Beauty.
I want advice on how to bake, I'm going to go to a baker. If I want advice on diamonds and jewelry, I'm going to go to a jeweler.
Jeweler.
I'm not going to go to a jeweler to ask him, hey, how do I bake this cake? You know what I'm saying? If I'm not going to go to a jeweler and say, hey, man, what's the best diamond out there? No, that's idiotic. You
Yep.
see what I'm saying? And that's where my IDGF attitude came in at when it comes to certain people speaking on things who don't have the experience. Now, again, I'm not negating their ideas and their advice, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt because you're not in there. And I could go deeper into it.
Sure.
Um, let's take the football aspect.
Sure.
There's a reason why when you see a running back running the ball and you see him run into a crowd, the average person would be like, why is he running into that crowd? There's nothing there. He needs to go over here or go over there. Why is he running into that big pile of people? Right? Now, notice this. Those people that's saying that, they're sitting in the stands. Their perspective on the game is totally different, right? Because you're in the stands looking down at the game. When you're the actual running back inside of the game, you see things that those people in the stands don't see. You if
I feel that, man. Yeah.
and you as the running back on that field, you see the hole. You know where the hole is supposed to be at, and you do your best to get through that hole. And
Yep.
we see people do this all the time. We seen Barry Sanders, a freak of nature, right? He runs through a crowd of people and somehow breaks loose and run 50, 60 yards down the field, right? But again, let me bring it to a close. The people that's in the stands is not seeing what you see because you are actually on the field, and their view is elevated while you, as the person that's in this game, see things from a different perspective. So the main point that I'm making here is perspective, the levels of perspective. People who sits in the stands, 9 times out of 10, never played the game before.
Oh yeah.
You got that 1% who played the game, who's sitting in the stands, sees exactly what they're doing. Okay, yep, I know why he's doing that, right? The
Yep.
people that's on the field actually playing the game see things in a different perspective. There's a hole right there. No matter how small it is, there's a hole right there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the hole's not there, and I gotta go this way. You know what I mean?
100%.
That's the main point that I'm trying to get at. It's the
I feel
it's perspective.
I
That's it.
feel that, man. And it's like you're mentioning about asking people who've even been in the industry that you want to go with. How do you go about this? They say, oh, that's not going to work out. But they're in the stands, right? And yeah, they have a good idea on the game, but maybe you see that opening that people can't see from their point of view. Or maybe the people in the stands are busy thinking about their own thing and they can't fully think about your idea and they just blurt something out because they've been known as like an industry leader. And, I was talking about this with my cousin. And, when a lot of people attain a lot of level of success, they get lost in the so-called sauce,
Mm.
and, they feel themselves too much. And it becomes about being right to satisfy an ego rather than having the humility to say, like, hey, you know what, I'm wrong, or maybe I don't know what this is. Because let's be honest, Bernard, like if we're the top podcaster, everyone's coming for advice. How easy would it just be like, oh yeah, that's not good, or yeah, you should do that. Oh man, that's really good. No, you should definitely not do that. You should do it. This is what I did. And a lot of people would show praise and admiration for that. But it's important to know our own limits,
Mm.
because
Mm.
if you don't have that understanding, you're really doing a disservice to the person who's asking you for advice because, you're in a different perspective than they are, and it's a very important point. And I think I just want to talk about sauces a little bit because I'm a big sauce guy. You,
Come
you
on
know,
with it. Come on with it.
Oh, for sure. So, let's go to the grocery store. We're in the sauce aisle, and, there's a lot of different sauces. We got ketchup, we got different brands of ketchup, we got mustard, we got different brands of that, and we got all of these flavorful sauces from Sriracha to Frank's Red Hot. And, I think it's important to realize, and this isn't going to relate to the previous analogy. So, this is a new kind of concept we're going with right here. This is kind of funny. But, like a lot of people, when they start to come into business or life, they try to be like, a same brand as someone else. Like let's say, I think it's pretty fair to say that Heinz is like the major ketchup brand. You try to be the no name brand for ketchup, or I don't know, let's say Parham's ketchup or something, right? And what you're going to find is not a lot of people are going to pick you up. They're not going to try you. And if they are going to try you, they're like, I don't know about this. But, then there's a new sauce that comes out. Let's say, I don't know, Parham signature sauce, which is like the first time that Sriracha hit the market. I don't know about you, Bernard, but like when Sriracha hit the market in Vancouver, everyone took it. Everyone wore the Sriracha shirts. Everyone was feeling it, and it's important to realize that there are various sauces, and each sauce, which is the kind of person you are, the personality you bring, the value that you bring to life, has a different purpose for different people. Some people are never going to try Sriracha. Some people are always going to love it. And that's something that you have to be okay with. Not everyone's going to love you. Not everyone's going to love you all the time. And there's going to be certain people that are going to be so obsessed with you, they'll follow you forever and they will literally cry if you're off the store. So I think that should be the motivation for everyone, whether it's for podcasting, whether it's for starting a business, because ultimately there is an ideal, perfect fit customer for you. And whether it's for your current business, your current podcast, or your current way of life, you gotta be authentic with yourself and realize that like I'm here in the world for a purpose and I need to do my best to market myself to help these people find me their signature sauce.
Mm.
Don't know
Mm.
if that was fire or weird. We'll keep it though.
No, 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 no. That's good. You sounded very Gary V-ish.
Did I? Oh man, sheesh, Gary V, let's go.
So all right. So it's it. I hate when I have great conversations with people, especially when I'm recording, right?
Mm,
That I'm looking at the time, I'm like, I gotta
yeah.
wrap it up, but I don't want to wrap it up. So, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep it going for a little bit,
Sure.
but I wanted to make sure I ask you this one specific question. I want you to answer me. What do creativity? What is creativity to you?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because I feel that by us. All right, let me step it back for a bit.
sure.
My wife is a teacher, right?
Right on.
I love the fact that she's a teacher because not only is she a teacher in her day job, but she's also a teacher to me in many aspects of what I should be doing and all that type of stuff, right? Which is the reason why God made her my wife. That's the reason why she is my rib, right? But I've realized just from looking at her class and having the opportunity to kind of sit in on her class and stuff like that, you know, uh, as people, as kids, as the kids get older, somehow their creativity is stripping away from them.
Mm,
And I hate that because I feel that if creativity has been taken away from me, then I won't be where I am right now. I won't be able to express me fully in all of its live and in living color type of way, right?
yeah.
So with that being said, I want to know, what is creativity to you?
Beautiful. So I think I'd like to start out with a quote. I may butcher the individual who said this. I'm pretty confident right now, going off a little bit of sleep. Didn't get that big of a sleep, so don't quote me on this. But I believe it was from Dr. John Rady, and he wrote a book called Spark, and the new science of exercise and its impact on the brain. And he also wrote a book called Go Wild on how being with a tribe and going into nature and exercising and avoiding grains and sticking with more, foods that we ate in our previous centuries of, population really helps us. And he mentioned, again, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure if it was from Dr. Rady, but I'm pretty sure. He was mentioning that when, here, that person was mentioning that when we first are born, the first thing that our parents want to do is for us to stand up, but we
Mm,
spend the remainder of their life telling them to sit down. And it's a funny quote, right? Because you just want the kid to stand up and start walking. You're like, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
But then we put them in the school system. Oh, sit down. Why are you walking? Why are you standing up? Why are you doing this? And it comes to the conditioning. It's at the end of the day, who was we're talking about? I think I was listening to Jordan Peterson. Do you know Jordan Peterson?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was mentioning that for creative people, it's very hard to even evaluate them, right? Because when you're in school, you have this box like we were talking about. And I know I was mentioning this box before to know your strengths and values and where you are. And you should definitely know that. But what ends up happening with school is their box is very narrow. You need to follow instructions. You need to do these a specific way. They don't say like, here's your start point, here's your end point, and do whatever you want. They say you follow this line and that's the only line that you go. And for creative people, that's not the way forward. And you know for me, Bernard, like I look at some assignments and I'm just like, why are you telling me to walk this path when, or sorry, like why are you telling me to walk up down up down up down when I could just go like a U-turn and get to it?
Yeah.
And creative people just see those boundaries as kind of like I don't know. It just sucks because right now I'm working on a research paper, Bernard, and they're telling me to write in a specific way, use specific formats, and for me, I kind of like to add a little bit of flavor through comedy. But for research papers, you got to be very professional and succinct,
Yeah.
and
Unfortunately.
you got it. Like I get it, but like it really limits people. And what Jordan Peterson was mentioning is this master student that I think he had or he was teaching. He was mentioning that they were so creative and they took everything in a hugely big direction that what ended up happening is even though their ideas were genius, they didn't actually, I think they got kicked out of the program. So it doesn't matter if your ideas were good. It didn't matter if you deserved to, have your paper published, even
Mhm.
though it was revolutionary. Since you were outside the norm, you got kicked out because they look at it a certain box. Even if you can see that box, but you're like, okay, well, this is the current understanding. I want to step out of it. And what
Hmm.
he was mentioning is that you need these kind of people that are creative. And he was also mentioning that creative people aren't right all the time. And 100%, I mean, look at me. I failed a bunch, but through the failures, I've gained the lessons. And you kind of shift your creative thinking. So even though you're stepping out of that box, which gives you a lot more certainty, because if your goal is like this point right here, you can
Hmm.
hit that in that box. But if your box is now bigger through creativity, finding that exact point is going to be harder. But there may be a path that other people can't see. So, it's just honing in on your craft, and it's realizing that it doesn't have to be a certain straight line. It's going up and down. And ultimately that creativity is, you know, just something that you'd want to do. Because I think a lot of creative people value autonomy a lot. And by getting restricted within those boxes, it can be a little bit burdensome and hard on the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I would agree.
Hmm.
I would totally agree. I man, I just keep thinking, again, going back to the children, right?
Mm.
You see the kid that's coloring. That kid stays in between the lines, and you
Mm.
think to yourself, man, that kid, you know, is really focused or staying between the lines. That kid is going, play by the rules, and
Mm.
saying really rule driven and stuff like that, right? Then we look at the kid next to him who's all outside the lines and everything, and we
Yep.
thinking to ourselves, that kid is going to be a mess. That kid's going to be really messy at this, and that, and third, whatever, right? And again, sort of like what I said earlier about perspective, right?
Mm.
We look at those two kids and we can kind of see what their life is going to be like, right? If we look into the future, we can kind of see it from that point. But
Sure.
who's to say that the kid that's coloring all outside the lines is is not playing within that kid's rules.
Sure.
You know, we look at Albert Einstein, one of my favorite one of my favorite people, right? Always have the best freaking quotes ever, right? Einstein was labeled as retarded, uh, with a learning disability and stuff like that as a kid, and then he becomes renowned as a freaking genius, right? So how can he go from retarded, and I don't mean to offend anybody with that word or anything like that, but how
Hmm.
can we go with a kid who was labeled with a learning disability to being a freaking genius, right?
Mm.
And then once we dig into that and really start unpacking that, we realize no, he was like that, like the way he was, when he became super known and all that type of stuff was the way he's always been, even as a kid. He just
Yep.
thought differently.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So we look at that particular teacher, right?
Sure.
Who look at a kid who's staying in between the lines, and then look at the kid who's coloring on outside the lines, and that teacher is putting those labels on them. And again, I'm not picking on teachers or anything like that. I'm just making a point of maybe we need to change the way we're thinking at
Absolutely.
how we viewing things. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to creativity. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Anybody can just throw paint up on the wall and just call it art. And there's people who pay huge money for it, right? And then there's people who will, paint by the numbers and
Mm.
everything like that. They still make huge amounts of money, right? So I'm saying that to say that why are we really trying to put limits on creativity? Yeah,
It's
I'm willing to even bet that those people super who are successful,
mm.
even super successful,
Sure.
right, has been super creative and been the ones that's been drawing outside of the lines.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Richard Branson's a notable example that comes to the dome right away. But but
Yeah.
but it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that this hits completely to perspective, right? Because based on an individual's point of view, that's what they can see of a person. And I think this is what is very unfortunate for a lot of creative people, because like you mentioned, we usually oftentimes get that negative social value. You know, we just get told like, oh, you're wrong, don't do it like this, or you're thinking doesn't match the class. And the problem is, Bernard, it's like creative people are such a small proportion of people that you get labeled as an outlier. Like if you do something wrong, it's not because you're creative, it's because you're wrong. And people only have their point of view. So if they see through a small box, but you're a huge circle, they can't see your circle. They will never understand your circle. And, you know, to expand these understandings, you have to go through failure. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't go through it. A lot of people don't have the tenacity to go through it. It's not easy. It hurts. I think there's very specific people who have undergone that transaction. They say, hey, I'll take this failure. It's going to impact my life positively. And, you know, that pain that I'm going to feel is worth the knowledge and understanding I'm going to gain. And creative people oftentimes do that. And I don't think it's much of a choice for them. It's just kind of their fruit, right? But a lot of people just don't see it. And through such a young age, you get told that you're not doing this right. This is wrong. I remember in my math classes, like I was using physics formulas to answer math in high school or whatever. And then my teacher was like, why are you using this? Marks off. I'm like, no, it's not. That's the right formula. I used it. I got the same answer. I showed my work. And, you know, it's like, it works. It works. I'm using it. I don't have to go by your path. I'm getting the answer. And, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the path that I took to get to the answer. It was my path. And that's the whole thing that we're talking about, Bernard. It's like, you don't have to follow a step-by-step system that someone else did. Find your own sauce, find your own flavor, and pursue that to your best ability. Some people aren't going to even see you. Some people are going to look at you and put you down, say, this guy's not going to get anywhere. And some people are going to grab you, throw you on all of their foods, and love you forever. Man, that was good.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I'm kind of blown away from that because it has me thinking like, man, did I in respect of this podcast, did I follow my own path, or I mean, again, you know, I took a little bit from Mike Dillard and John Loomis or whatever, and I sort of used them as a guide, but while using them as a guide, I still transcended in my mind.
Sure.
I still transcended beyond that guide. You know what I'm saying? So I started with a foundation of those two podcasts, right?
Sure. You got the ingredients.
And I still transcended beyond that, right? So man, you definitely hit that on the nose. Like, good job, buddy. Good job.
I appreciate that, man. Let me get my pat on the back for myself.
Yeah, man. Yeah. If I could pat your back, not in this.
Hey, man, let's go virtual. No, I'm kidding.
I would have.
For sure.
So let me. Okay, so we get down to the last couple of questions here.
Sure.
I want you to tell the class something about you, something personal about you that cannot be found on Google or Wikipedia.
Man, that's a good question too. You see what I mean, guys? Like this guy's just got too many good questions. I mean, there's going to be a lame answer, man, but I think I kind of poured out the sauce. I'm an empty container right now, you know. It's just, you know, I failed a lot. And you know, when you Google my name, there's thankfully now some things promoting myself, such as, you know, the podcast, some of the poetry that I'm doing, and some of the advocacy work I've done through my roles as a board of director and senator. But you know, it's just a highlight reel. You know, I've had a decent amount of success, but I would hedge my bets on I've had a lot more failures. And, you know, they weren't fun. They weren't positive. I didn't celebrate. You know, a lot of times I got very angered and flustered and hurt, and I deserve this. I worked for this. And I kind of want to add a quote. This is a little bit of a tangent, but one of my friends and podcast guests, Jordan Skripnik, was mentioning when I was talking to him about these failures, he's like, when you put in the work and you feel like you deserve something because you're the most qualified, you just increase the percentage of chance that you are to attain that award. And, you know, that hit different because he's a very analytical person. He's kind of like one of those smaller boxes. He's probably smaller than even the regular boxes most people look into. And that's not to say that he's bad for that. I think that is a tremendous value in certain contexts. So does creativity. But
Mm-hmm.
each play in a certain role inside of a company or in life. And, when he mentioned that, I'm just like, wow, that makes so much sense. You can be the best player for basketball and never get signed, you know, and you could increase your chance to 1 million, but maybe that guy who is going to see you has some beef with you because, I don't know, for X, Y, or Z reason, maybe because you have more following on Instagram or something and he's jealous and he's insecure about that. And, it just hit differently because a lot of people, me included, are just like, man, when I deserve something, because I put in the work, man, hustling and putting in as much of my effort as possible. And that's what I mean by hustling is something that I value so much. And just to see something's not work out when I honestly and see it from a broad view, not just because I want to win because I'm me, but seeing it, okay, like what did this person do? What did this person do? Who deserves this? Sometimes I'm just really like, come on. But, there are other factors that are out of my control. And one thing that I'd like to actually add in from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, are you familiar?
No, no.
Okay. So Cal Newport is a professor, I believe, in Georgia for computer science. May be wrong on the university. But anyways, he wrote a book called Deep Work, and it's actually a good one for audiobook as well. And he essentially talks about how to get into the habits and how to get more things done in the day. One of the main things that he talks about is, I think it was called the leading factor in his book. And it's things that are very trackable. For example, the amount of success that you have isn't something you can track. The amount of sales that you have isn't something you can track. What you can track, however, though, Bernard, is putting in 5 hours a week to pursue this project, is putting in 5 hours to call people to get a sale. And I think that's the main thing that you should go for, because at the end of the day, what's out of your hands, you can't control. And if you put your value into that, you're not going to get anywhere. But Bernard, like you're a beast on the podcast. You're doing like 7 podcasts a week or something. I don't know. But you got a lot of hustle, you got a lot of strength. And these are things that you are accounting for. And whether or not your podcast becomes Gary V by next week is out of your hands. But what you are controlling is the amount of content you are putting out there, is the amount of value you're bringing to other people through these recordings. And that is something that a lot of people should focus on, because failure is real. I've been very honest with my failures. I failed so much, and I look forward to failing more in the future. And just trust that you put in the work, you're going to increase your percentage more and more each day. And although some things that you honestly think you deserve may not come to you, I honestly think that there's a reason for it, because maybe it wasn't the right time for you. Maybe you're going to meet someone who's going to be your spouse. Maybe it's going to meet someone who's going to be your future business partner. So it's easy to look at a failure in the first time and say, that sucks, and cry or whatever, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you're not seeing the big picture. Fast forward 20 years, and then you're going to see that failure played a pivotal point in your life, right? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people wouldn't realize when they're Googling me, which actually turned out to be a better conversation than I thought when I was about to speak. So I love it when that happens.
Hey man, the Genesis moment. The
Hey,
Genesis
let's
moment.
go.
I'll share this. Uh, just recently, I had recorded another episode.
Mm,
I believe I was on somebody else's podcast, or maybe it was for this podcast. I don't quite remember, but I told this story of myself. In high school, I played, I ran track and I played
mm,
football. And I would have did basketball, but basketball was in between those seasons. And yeah, I couldn't do all 3 sports. Never ran track before. I knew that I was fast because of how fast I was on the football field. And I figured, if I run track, it would make me even faster. You know what I mean? It would give me more of an edge, which it really did, wholeheartedly. It taught me really how to run correctly. Um,
we talking
so
about practice.
practice, man, practice. And for those of you who don't know, that's an Allen Iverson reference. So, um, so I started running track, I did good enough to go to the regionals for the state. Didn't do well enough to go beyond that the next year because I started running in my sophomore year. My junior year, I went to regionals again, did better, went to states, didn't even make it out the first round in the states. Right. Senior year, in my mind, it's like is hell or nothing. We got to make it happen. Right. I did things that I did not do the years before previously. Right.
Mm.
Um, now my habits was different. The habits I started developing at that point was I'm running before school.
Mm.
Before I go to school, I'm running a few miles, right?
Sure.
Uh, while I'm at practice, I'm running till I puke, and then after I puke, I wipe my face and I'm running again, as hard or harder, right? I stole some hurdles because my event was the 110 hurdles. I literally stole some hurdles and took it home with me.
Yep.
And once I got home after practice, after running a couple of miles before school, after running till I puked while I was at school at practice, by the time I get home with these hurdles, I'm in my driveway going over the hurdles. And then I stop, about an hour or two, probably about an hour. I go in, eat, do some homework, take a shower, get right back up, get up early again, run those miles again. Everything. Those was my habits. So my senior year, I'm doing these new habits, right?
Mm.
My prom was the day before the state track meet, uh, which is another story that we'll talk about offline. But the state track meet was the day after the prom.
Mm.
Yeah, I get to the state track meet. Now this is big time in my mind. I've literally worked my tail off. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. If it doesn't work out, then I know that everything I've done has not been in vain. I've
Mm.
still put in the work. So I run the first heat. I killed that one.
Mm.
Now I'm in a position where I've never been in before. I'm in the second round of the state track meet, right?
Right.
So am I getting nervous about it? Just a tad bit, but again, I've prepared for this. Is nothing that none of my other competitors could do to me that I haven't done to myself. Right? So I do that. I killed that one.
Mm.
I get all the way up to the finals. And now I'm feeling real good, feeling super confident that I could take this, right?
Right.
And this is the whole story. So there's this guy, there's a place in Michigan called Goodrich, or there's a city in Michigan called Goodrich, which is, I don't know, uh, about just outside of Detroit or what have you.
Right.
Um, and so, me and this guy, we got cool, whatever else like that. And there was this other guy, I forget what school he's from, but he's literally yelling at the hurdles, like a madman, right? So me and this guy from Goodrich, we're looking at him like this guy nuts, but whatever, right? So I'm looking down my lane, and I see that there's a hurdle that's not straight. It's kind of
Mm.
off, and I got the referee's attention. I said, hey, my hurdle is not straight. Can we fix that? And the referee was like, no, it's okay. You'll be okay. And I said, no, no, I need that hurdle to be fixed, sir. Oh no, you'll be okay. So I looked up at the stands. It was like, hey, coach, I need you to get on this ref so that we can get my hurdle fixed. I'm not running until this hurdle is fixed. So the referee said, okay, fine, whatever. I'll go fix it. Because in my mind, everything had to be the same. The hurdles were straight. You know, these other races, I'm not going to let this one little thing, this one
Sure.
little hurdle not being straight, cause me not to win. Right.
Mm.
And that's a nugget right there. That's a nugget for the class. I want to make sure I point that out. I want you to know that that is a nugget. So once we got that hurdle straight, I'm in the blocks. I'm going through my uh, pre-run, pre-race ritual, or what have you. Take that deep breath. I hold it. I get my lean. The gun goes off. I'm out. I start going over the hurdles, feeling real good, real confident. Everything's looking good. I'm starting to lead, you know, into the race or whatever else like that. And I see this guy out the corner of my eye. And he starts making his move. And when I seen him out the corner of my eye, I said, "Oh hell no! This is not going to happen today. I'm not going to let him beat me. I'm not going to let him beat me." So of course, I started running faster. I was
Mm,
already running fast, but seeing him out the corner of my eye made me run faster. And I'm really not running against anybody else on the track. I'm
right.
really racing that time clock. I'm racing myself, but ultimately that time clock. Nobody else on the track matters. I'm racing myself. I'm competing against myself and that clock, right? And that's another nugget that I want the class to pick up on. So I crossed the finish line, came in first place. Awesome, right? I'm happy. I'm exhausted too, but I'm happy. I'm more happy that I am exhausted because I'm more great. No, I'm more exhausted about being happy than I am of running the race, right?
Mm,
So yeah, I celebrated at that time. 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, what's next? What else
mm,
do I need to do? You know what I'm saying? So you see how earlier in this interview, I talked about how, yeah, I'll celebrate, but 5 minutes later, I'm talking about, okay, what's next? You know what I'm saying? How can I use this to leverage me to get over here or over there or whatever else like that, right? So now we on the stage and they're passing out medals and things of that nature. And they get to me and oh, by the way, the guy who was yelling at the hurdles, yeah, he I think he came in like fifth place. So I'm looking at him like, you did all of that for nothing, bro. All of that for nothing. You
hey
trying to
man,
intimidate me?
he made a story on your podcast. It's not for
Yeah,
nothing.
you're right. You're right. But he ain't intimidating me. I feel like he was doing that just to intimidate the other racers. But I'm from Detroit, man. I don't get intimidated easy.
For
you know,
sure, man. For sure.
so I'm on the stage and they passing out medals and they get to my name. They say, in first place, Bernard Gleaton with the new state record of
Let's go.
right. So again, I didn't really care about my focus wasn't trying to get this state record because I knew nothing about this state record, right? Until they mentioned it. But again, it all came from those habits. So me running till I puked, right? Me stealing those hurdles and bringing it home. Me running before school. All of those little habits. It goes back to what we talked about earlier about that 1%.
Mm,
That 1%. That 1% allowed me to get me that state record. Allowed me to do this with like 2 hours of sleep, couple hours of sleep, right? But it prepared me, right? I may not have seen it. You was probably able to see it a little bit throughout the season,
mm.
but when it came time for that thing to compound, it compounded like no other at the state track. That's to bring everything to a close, brother.
It's true, man. It's true. And it's a funny story because like once you're in this process, man, like you don't even realize what happens with time. Like you don't realize when your birthday is, you don't realize anything. It's just like you said, it's a habit, man. It's you're a hamster running on a hamster wheel and like you're just on that grind. You're on that grind. You're on that
Yeah,
grind.
yeah.
And before you know it, you set new state records that you didn't even know about and you're like, huh, okay.
Awesome. All right. And
Guess
then
it's working.
and then on the way home, I'm thinking like, man, I got this medal, I got this state record. Man, that's cool. Oh man, thank you. Thank you. 5 minutes later, I'm like,
What's
okay,
next?
what's next?
Yeah, let's get it.
What's next? Right. So speaking on what's next, I want you to give the class one takeaway that you want them to leave from this lesson.
Sure. So I think we covered a lot of things from creativity to, trusting the process and all that. I think the main takeaway for the class is don't be afraid to fail and realize that failure is normal and it's a part of your journey in life, whether it's through business, relationships, communication, anything. You're going to fail before you succeed. And I think if the class took that away, they would be a lot more content in their life. They would be happier, and it would give them hope, because life isn't easy. But if you believe in yourself that you know you're going to fail, but you're going to succeed after, and learn from your failures, I think it would give a lot of inspiration, hope, determination, and hopefully success to a lot of the viewers and listeners of the podcast.
Mm, that is the perfect way of wrapping this episode up. We went
Absolutely.
a little bit longer than I originally planned, but this all happened the way I knew it was going to happen.
Beauty.
I man, I I don't think I think I alluded to this before I hit the record button. That I pretty much knew like this is probably going to be a longer episode
Mm,
because of what we're talking about, and I couldn't have a better person than you to come into the School of Hard Knocks to actually talk about this lesson, right? And I typically sometimes I could come up with the name of the lesson beforehand. Sometimes it's while I'm editing, but
mm,
I think this is going to be something with process, like the class of process or something of that nature. I love that.
sure.
I love that. That's what was ringing out in my head. But with that being said, I want you to tell the class what you got going on, how they can find you, where you want to be
Sure.
at. I know you in Canada, so maybe you're going to be at Tim Hortons or something. I don't know.
That's funny. That's funny. You guys got some Tim Hortons in Michigan too, don't you?
We do, but I do need you to send me some ketchup chips. My wife and I, we love those ketchup chips.
Oh my God, dude. I got to sign off right now. Ketchup chips are terrible. Just putting it out there.
Oh,
It was nice knowing you, Bernard. No, I'm
man,
kidding.
I can introduce you to my wife now.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so I'm at the Personal Process Podcast, and at Personal Process Podcast on Instagram, on the YouTube. If you Google the Personal Process Podcast, we're on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on Reddit with 6 lovely subscribers at the time of this recording. You could be the 7th, who knows? But
Well, you don't have to be the eighth because I'll be the seventh. I got you,
oh
brother.
sheesh, my guy, I love it. Yeah, and we have a link on our Instagram with a link tree that has a bunch of other things that you can click on. So just find us there. And yeah, if you're interested in checking out the podcast, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts from. And we're always looking to improve. So hit us up in the DMs. Let us know if you'd like a particular guest to come on, what tips we can have to improve. And yeah, looking forward to that. Thanks so much for having me, Bernard. This was an awesome conversation. And yeah, freestyled a lot of it, and I think it came out pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah. I knew we was gonna freestyle this and it was gonna come out good. For that, man, I greatly appreciate you for being on the show, brother. For you being transparent and open and giving us so much value as you have today. And to the class, I hope you took a lot of great notes. Failure is not the end. It is part of the journey. It is part of the process. Again, I recommend for you guys to pick up some of those books that we mentioned earlier, the Atomic Habits as well as Deep Work. Check out those audio books or Amazon, what have you. Definitely go check out those books. It would definitely help you with, dare I say, creativity as well as dealing with failure and everything else on a personal level and even business and whatever else you're doing. With that being said, definitely go check out this brother on his podcast. Subscribe, rate, review, show him some love on his podcast. I mean, you pretty much heard this brother speak. This brother is super knowledgeable. Uh, I mean, the dude speaks so eloquently. I have a little bit of hood in me, and so that comes out a whole lot. You know, I'm trying my best not to use certain words, but it's hard. But hey, it's all good. But this brother, man, I love the way you speak, man. You definitely are off to good and great things and everything like that. So with that being said, class, again, make sure you check him out. And you know what I like to say during these times, or at the end of these things. What I like to say at the end of these things is, in everything that you go after, in everything that you chase after, make sure you chase after it with violent action. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Even reach out to me and everything like that. And other than that, I will see you guys in the hallways. About 15 years ago, I hated where I was at. And I knew that I was meant for more. Greatness even. I wanted to start a business. And I asked my friends and family, how do I start a business? 90% of them never started a business before. And the 10% that did, didn't remember what they did. So I went on and earned my bumps and bruises from the School of Hard Knocks. My inspiration for the School of Hard Knocks and the courses that I've created was to reach people that felt the same way that I felt way back when. Like I was destined for more. The purpose of the Genesis Project podcast was to move those same people toward that greatness with the guest professor that comes to the show and learn from their mistakes. This is a call to action to those who are searching for greatness. Join the School of Hard Knocks by commenting, sharing, subscribing, and get this message out to those searching for greatness. Click on the links in the description to get more information. And everything you do, everything that you chase after it with violent action. I'll see you in the hallway.